Hello, welcome to this week's episode of Dan Pushing Sports News. This week I want to talk about religion, which may or may not be like a contentious topic at the moment in the current political climate. My original reason for wanting to talk about it was the recent terrorist attack in Christchurch in New Zealand, which was the most major terrorist attack that we've ever had, not including government-sanctioned violence against political and racial and religious minorities or whatever. I think it is important for the community and even the country to have like a response to like tragedies, major events and major violent events that people can look at as a reference point and respect. And I think like on a world scale, relatively, the response that we've had from New Zealand has been substantially closer to what I would hope for a government and a community to do than I've seen in response to any other similar attacks. That being said, there's definitely a lot of work that needs to be done in New Zealand society and community that would make the ground less fertile for violence. But I think as far as like Western colonized developed societies go, there's a chance for New Zealand to make it happen. But the longer we go on with kind of like complacent, basically capitalist, individualist lifestyle, the harder it's going to be to pull back and stop our kind of communities from becoming like America and Australia and England and Europe. I think there's an advantage in that New Zealand is small and there's like a bit less momentum at this point going towards being like a major developed, globalized, Western capitalist machine. But there is still a lot of movement pushing in that direction and or a lot of complacency that just allows movement to go in that direction. I think the less people are engaged with each other and with their lives and the patterns and processes that make up their lives, the more or the easier it is for things to get out of hand. Like the flow of society is made up by everyone's actions. So the more conscious and careful everyone's actions and attitudes and behaviors are, the less like the momentum just takes off and things snowballing. But in order to do that, I think we need communities to have like a real grounding in what they genuinely believe are good social and communal practices, which I think there are communities doing that, but I think there is a majority of people who just don't have that kind of emphasis on communities and relationships, and I think it results in a lot of weak and unstable relationships and forms of communication that lead to eventually larger and more drastic forms of violence and abuse. The main thing that really affected me about the attack in Christchurch wasn't the fact that it happened, because I don't think anyone in the current state of the world should be surprised by a racist terrorist attack on a mosque. Like, I definitely think it's something that we can expect to happen and could have expected to happen. And like acting shocked like that is kind of an irresponsible way to deal with the situation because it's unrealistic. But the thing that I really care about is that the Muslim community is doing something that we all need to be doing, which is having and sustaining a community which surrounds belief. And that belief includes, ethics and behavioral standards and practices that, more or less pertain to health and lifestyle as well. Not that it is exactly the way that I do things or would do things, but that's not my place to say. The fact that they're doing that is what's important and is what a majority of people in society are not doing, which I think leads to a lot of the social and political problems that we're having. And the fact that that is the group being targeted in this instance and in the kind of like world media theatre of dramatization of events and of terrorist happenings and world war is a real tragedy. It's like the point of madness or instability that we've got into as a collective, and with our kind of like the mental health status of our collective has gone to such a point that like one of the few groups of people who are like really trying to sustain a practice and a community up against the kind of like domination of individualism and mechanization in capitalist society becomes the image of evil, like in the major representations that we have of society, like in the mainstream media, blah blah blah. Like, it's so ridiculous or mind-boggling that people are so unable to look at situations and think about them for themselves or understand them for themselves, that they can confuse the teachings of Islam, which are so similar to the teachings of Christianity, with evil and violence and fear and danger. That's just baffling. Like, no one could like make that up. But I think that if there were more groups doing that, like sharing a belief or an understanding, and that being kind of the foundation of their communality and their communication and their outlook on the world, the way society kind of plays out would be a lot more stable. And I don't think that those groups and understandings should all be the same. Like, I don't think they should have the same views. I think they should have different views, and people should find communities and make communities based on their beliefs. But the more that people are not part of a community, and the longer we go on with like a society that is not built up of communities and communality, the more we're going to see these kind of like irreversible changes and problems. I think it's particularly important that different communities and different groups have different beliefs, and that we are able to have a society that is made up of different groups. But that's not the same as having a society that's made up of like a million different individuals, because then they kind of all just get amassed together. Like, everyone just gets sucked into the flow of the majority because they don't have anything else to hold them down. And I think that has been like one of the functions of religion in the past, is to hold community together and have like a foundation for people to understand themselves and express themselves on. Aside from the problems that people have with religion becoming dogmatic and ultimately suppressing individual expression and experience and understanding of the world, which is something that we still have now anyway in our secular society. So I don't think it's like a symptom of religion. I think it's like a symptom of human complacency and laziness with regard to people's own experience of the world. Because I think if you really look at what religious guidance is saying, they're mostly saying the same thing in different ways, which is really important as well, because it means that people who engage with things through different formats can access the same depth of practice through different systems. But they seem to all be encouraging people to live in ways that would mean everyone can live together and accept each other and be happy and healthy and peaceful, expressed in their own different ways. But like, you know, what the actual teachings are saying from like Islam and Christianity, as much as like Buddhism and Taoism, is that you can't rely on information and structure from the external world. You can't put the responsibility of your life or behavior or health in the hands of other people, or like a system that's outside of you or whatever. Like, I don't think those systems are in place to make people all be the same, but they're supposed to give people like a gateway into a deeper understanding of themselves and their lives and their relationships with the world and with other people. Fundamentally, but I mean, obviously, like, those things have been abused many times in the past. But, like, only in the same way that all the systems that we rely on now are being abused. So the fact that the content of religion is not the problem. If anything, it's that people aren't following the guidance that is available in religion that things fuck up. And then people try and make new ideas and new systems and new ways of kind of getting out of the traps that they've found themselves in, as if it's the fault of that religious information. But I mean, what more can religion do other than kind of give you all of the starting points, since the only way to really achieve independence and health and strength is to engage with them yourself anyway. But I don't think that everyone should just go out and join a religion. I think there's actually just a lot of focus and work that needs to be done, especially on people's internal lives and kind of their outlooks and relationships with the world, or between the internal experience and the external occurrences. Like, I want people to really think about and ask themselves what is important to do in the world. Like, is your job important? Like, do we need people to be sitting at a computer or on the phone in order to have happy and healthy and functional lives and people and communities? Because I think work is a major component in the structure of people's lives. Like, the work used to be intertwined with people's relationships with the environment, and therefore with their kind of spirituality, because you couldn't have any of the other things without the other. But now people mostly seem to work out of obligation, and because like everything is run on money, obviously, if you don't work, then you can't participate in the normal life patterns and thereby life experiences that make you a part of society, which is the closest thing to community that we have, really. But that is exactly where the repression and violence come from that everyone hates and is upset about. Like, it's really hard to engage with the environment and the community and your life experience if you have to or choose to do some mind-numbing shit for 40 hours a week. And I don't think that's some kind of like malicious plan by some, I don't know, capitalist overlords who want everyone to be punished. I think it's like the complacency and has always been there, but the longer we go on being complacent and being complacent about complacency, like the more, I guess, addicted to that complacency and the complacent lifestyle we are. I mean, like, everyone's obsessed with convenience as well and things being easy, and that's part of the same problem. And like, I just don't think it's necessary for things to be easy. I think it's good to have challenges. And like, yeah, if we can have some kind of leverage to make things work better, then it's good. But I don't think that's what a lot of the systems and technologies and forms of communication that we have at the moment are doing. And I don't think that's what they're really trying to do either. Even if people want them to solve those problems or make things go more smoothly or whatever, I think what they end up doing is removing people further from life, ultimately, and from the things that connect them with other people and themselves. But I think if there were more groups established and it was something that most people did, whichever group you're a part of, it would mean that mitigating between beliefs had more structure as well. Because even if there's disagreement and conflict between belief, you have a starting point and a foundation to negotiate it from. If you have some kind of engagement with your own belief, then you're able to understand the belief of others and the motivation for them engaging with and protecting that belief, even if you disagree. But if you don't have an engagement with your own belief or your attitude on the world and kind of explore and know what it is, then you probably just think people who have some kind of belief are dumb or like wrong or misguided or evil. I don't know exactly where we're going to go from here, but I think that now is a really good opportunity for people to reevaluate where they're at in terms of their lifestyle and belief and community. Because when there's a tragic event, it does give people motivation to reconsider or restructure their, relationships with the world and with other people and the forms of communication that we choose to use. And it's unfortunate that it happens that way. But it does seem like there's not a lot that can really motivate people to change without it building up and kind of overflowing in these kinds of events. But I think if it's made more habitual and more immediate and more integrated into, become more central to what we feel we need to be doing as life, then I think we can sustain the kinds of engagement that we need to have like a stable society. Well, religion is not really a sport, but I think sport is some form of a replacement for the kinds of things we need or that we can get out of having a religious practice. So I think even sport or having like a sport club or a community meetup kind of thing is better than nothing, or other kinds of communal activities like that. But I would just encourage everyone to engage with the things that they do in their lives habitually as deeply as possible so that they can become that kind of connection and become more of a grounded and stable community. Well, thanks everyone for listening. Hope to see you again soon.